Hi, this is Wilfredo Hernandez from the Brooklyn Community Pride Center on behalf of the LGBTQ New Americans Oral History Project, and we are here with
Anvar at Brooklyn Community Pride Center, June 13th, 2018.
Welcome, Anvar.
Thanks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. You're actually the second narrator in the third collection of our oral history project. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite.
So maybe you can start a little bit by telling us where you grew up.
I grew up in Uzbekistan, in a city called Samarkand. It's one of the historical cities of the East, which was founded 27 centuries ago. And it used to be, so Uzbekistan used to be, back when I was born, Uzbekistan used to be part of USSR, which was 1986. Now it's an independent country.
So what was it like growing up in Uzbekistan?
Well, as a kid, I didn't understand the differences between straights and gays, or between sexes. As a kid, you just run and play with everyone. But I always wanted to play with girls and play dolls and jump with them, run with them. And I guess as a child it was okay, but once I started growing up a bit, I felt people discriminating me for doing that, for not following the rules of society in terms of sex, I guess. And it was disheartening. So
how, let's backtrack a little bit. How do you identify?
Him, he, him.
He, him.
As a gay man, as he, him pronounced.
Okay. And was that something you recognized from childhood?
Well, I guess I didn't know the differences. I didn't know the terms and names, but I always knew that I liked boys.
So aside from playing, what were some of your favorite things growing up?
I was very good in music. So I used to sing, I used to dance, and I used to play musical instruments. But at some point I had to quit because as much as I wanted to be singing and playing piano, it attracted a lot of attention towards my personality, towards myself, which at the same time increased the discrimination and hatred towards me.
And that's something you experienced very young?
Yeah, I was 13 when I just gave up playing piano and singing at the school choir.
And that's something just from other students bullying or?
Students, older students, neighborhood people.
So aside from music, what were some of the other things that you did?
When I was 13, I quit music and I was very depressed. And I was thinking of committing suicide at that age. And one day, my English teacher told me that I was an A student. And she told me that I'm not going to get A this semester because I'm not doing good. And I was very upset because I was very competitive at school. And I came back home and I knew that my neighbor, this old Russian lady, she used to teach English. And I went over to see her. I said, hi, my name is Anvar, I'm your neighbor, and I want to come and take classes. She's like, okay, you can come now. I'm like, seriously? She's like, yes. So I went to take a class and I fell in love with English language. And so I have to say that English and my teacher, they saved my life. Because I actually was planning to commit suicide at the same week that I went to see her, because I was so fed up with all this discrimination and hatred towards myself. And she basically saved my life, as well as English language. And it just opened up a door for me to find something new. And then I started reading books. It's still my passion, reading books. And I read them specifically in English, not in Russian, not in Uzbek. So,
what were some of the books that you read that inspired you?
well, so first, my favorite book was Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and the second favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. And then I read The Lord of the Rings, yes, fantasy, and so on. I read a lot of like classical books as well. So.
So, what about learning English and reading and helped you? What about it inspired you?
I just found something new for myself, which led me to be by myself, because I spent a lot of time home practicing English, learning new words, writing them down, and reading books, making myself to read books to get better, to be better in English. And also, once you start learning a foreign language, a culture, you find out a lot of stuff about a life and culture of certain, like let's say I started really learning English, I started learning about countries like United States, Australia, Canada, UK, and I found a lot of information about LGBT community, LGBT rights, that people can be gay and it's okay, and they can get married, which I would have never dreamt of at that age. I would have never dreamt of saying to anyone that I'm gay because I was so scared. So it opened up a lot of doors for me to fight for myself, for my life.
So what was it like? Maybe you can talk about one of the moments where you realized there were people like you out in the world, and that people were living lives openly. And
it made me happy, but at the same time envious. I was jealous because like, oh my God, those people can do it. Why can't I? Why can't I just come out and say to everyone, hey, I'm gay, I'm as much human as you are, but I like boys. But I was, I guess, culture, religion, community, they scared me so much in terms of like saying that people like me should not exist.
And when you say culture and religion, can you talk a little bit more about what the culture and religion is like?
I guess culture and religion are very intertwined in Uzbekistan. It's a majority Muslim country. Although religion is not practiced as, let's say, in Iran or Saudi Arabia, and it's a secular country, but still it plays a huge role in terms of, condemning people. When community doesn't have an excuse to say what's right, what's wrong, they go back to religion and they find ways to condemn your actions, although they don't follow religion. And that was like very unique experience for me. Like when people who do not follow religion, but they would say, oh, this is a sin, you're gonna burn in hell,
And so after school, right, so you learned English and you continued your studies?
I went to college in Uzbekistan. I studied tourism. And then in 2004, I decided to move to Russia because I wanted to pursue, to continue studying, and I didn't want to stay in Uzbekistan. Back then, it was one of the few options to travel, a country to travel without obtaining a visa, because to go to all other countries, you had to go to embassy, get a visa, whereas with Russian Federation and Uzbekistan, you don't have to do that. So, and my parents were in Russia in 2004, and I went to Russia and wanted to go to school, but didn't work out in the beginning. And finally, I got into school in 2007.
And so you finished your studies in Russia?
I did my bachelor's degree in linguistics in Russia, although I've never done anything linguistically. I mean, if you ask me a question of a history of a word, I wouldn't be able to answer. Sorry.
So what about linguistics was interesting to you?
I guess that passion for language. And I wish I would have chosen a second language, because when you go to study a foreign language in a school, you can choose a secondary language to study. But I guess I was a fool.
So you finished your studies at what part of Russia?
I was in Moscow. I lived in Moscow.
And what was that experience like compared to growing up in Uzbekistan?
Well, I guess Uzbekistan and Russia are much alike, but at least in Russia there were some gay clubs that you could go to. But at the same time, I have to say, I found out in Russia that I'm a brown person, and that's when discrimination started. Straight away, like the day I arrived, my mom picked me up from the airport, and we went to a supermarket to buy some fruits. And once we left the supermarket, we were stopped by police for ID check. And I was like, "What's happening, Mom?" She's like, "Oh, this is a regular thing in Russia to check IDs. And they target mostly brown-looking people, just like me." So that was like, there were good things and bad things, and this was one of the worst things of my experience in Russia.
What were some of the good things?
Well, good things were like, like in every country there are good people and bad people. I was very lucky enough to meet a lot of good people.
Was Russia the first time you met other gay people, or were you?
Yes. Russia was a country where, like, one of my colleagues, he's a gay man, and he was very funny, and I admired him for being open, but I couldn't even tell him that I'm gay. I mean, obviously he knew, but I didn't have that courage to come out to someone because I was so scared. I guess the past fears played a big role in terms of how to behave, even when I was like in a safe place, and I couldn't tell him.
When was the first time you came out?
I came out when I was 16 to my friend in Uzbekistan. But I came out to her because I knew that she's a close friend of mine and I could trust her. And I told her that I'm gay, and we cried.
What was that moment like for you? What did that mean to you?
It was such a relieving moment. Like I could feel I have wings at the time. Like I wanted to fly, because she was such a good listener, and I told her my story, and we just hugged each other and cried, and it felt so good. I wasn't afraid anymore. Like when I was telling her my story, I just found a person to trust.
So from that moment on, did it become easier to claim that identity, or harder?
I guess knowing one thing and acknowledging is two different things. Obviously, I knew I'm gay, but I didn't want to acknowledge it, and I led a double life in Russia. I wouldn't tell my colleagues anything about my personal life, but at the same time, I was dating someone. A Russian man, cute Russian man in Moscow, but I had to lead a double life because I was scared that I would lose my job if I come out to someone, or I was just afraid of. So my mom used to work with me at the same restaurant. She was a pastry chef, and most of her colleagues are from all over the world, like from ex-Soviet countries. Countries, unfortunately, are very homophobic, and so I was afraid that I would hurt my mom by telling people that I'm gay, and I didn't come out to anyone at work.
Did your mother know?
I think she knew, but we never discussed this until I came to New York, where I understood that I have to acknowledge who I am. Where I found courage to call her and tell her I'm gay.
Did you go to gay clubs in Russia?
Yes, I've been to several gay clubs in Russia.
What was it like the first time you went to a gay club?
It was such a surreal moment. to be among people who were just like you, but I still felt like I'm a foreigner even in that spaces because of my color of country of origin. I still felt like I'm a foreigner.
Did that change when you came here?
Completely. I stopped being afraid of police, not like in Russia, I guess. And I guess the difference between Russia and United States is no matter where you're from, what's your nationality, what language you speak, first of all, you're human. Whereas in Russia, I guess it's vice versa. And Uzbekistan, I guess, too.
So at what point did you make the decision to come to the United States?
Well, I always wanted to come to the United States. I mean, New York was priority for me from the time I started learning English. But I tried also to go to UK. I couldn't get a visa. I tried to go to Canada. I just wanted to go to some English-speaking country. And in 2013, I applied to school in New York, and I got accepted. And I went to the embassy in December 2013, and I arrived to New York in 2014, January 1st. It was a very symbolic date for me because I wanted to start from the scratch.
What made New York a priority when you first started learning English?
Just the culture of so many cultures becoming one in New York and living together. It was, and also a lot of Hollywood movies, I guess. Yeah, Statue of Liberty, Times Square. I remember myself in Times Square first days were like, just like every other tourist. But now I don't go to Times Square.
What school did you?
I went to Monroe College. It's in the Bronx. I did my associate's degree on hospitality.
So talk a little bit more about that first day in Times Square, or that first day you landed in New York City. Tell us what that experience was like.
Well, I guess I have to start with the plane stuff. When I went to the airport, I have to relive this moment so many times in my head. Like I would play this like, one day I will do it. One day I will be at the airport flying to New York, and the announcer would say, "Welcome to JFK." I got so emotional when I came out to the airport and I heard announcer saying that the flight just landed from Moscow. It was like just some magic moment for me. Yeah, it made me very emotional actually. I was like, I did it.
And where was the first place you went in New York?
So my cousin picked me up. It was January 1st, 2014. I guess everything was closed because of the holiday. So we went home, Queens and Rego Park back then. And I ended up being in Soviet Union because I thought Soviet Union is like Brighton Beach area, but Rego Park was like everywhere, like Russian science at the shops. And I was like, wow, I'm in Russia again. Well, I'm in Uzbekistan because when we came home, everyone was talking Uzbek. I'm like, wow. I ran away from them and I ended up again with them. So.
And how long did you stay with them?
I stayed until I got my asylum because I didn't want to change my address to send USCIS a letter. I was like, I'm just going to stay until I get my asylum done. So I left, I moved out 2017 August.
So when you came, how long was it before you had applied for asylum?
I applied at the end of my you have 1 year window to apply for asylum. So I applied on December 29th, 2014. So I had just 2 days left out of my window because I was still fighting with myself what to do next. I it was a huge decision for me, as I understood that either I'm choosing myself or I'm choosing my family and my culture and going back to Uzbekistan and living the life that society wants me to live. So it was a huge fight with myself. Once I won that fight, I went to see a lawyer and we started the process.
And what was that process like for you?
Well, in the beginning it was like I was excited that I'm able to do this in this country, to apply for asylum. But once you wait, I waited for my interview 2 years and 3 months, which was a very long wait time for me. And being in a limbo of not knowing what's going to happen, what's going to be the outcome, was a very, very stressful, I have to say. Like not knowing what's the future is holding for you during the interview and after the interview. What if I get the no response, where my case is going to be transferred to a court and I have to wait another 5 years? And it was like all the scary thoughts would never leave my head.
What was the interview process like?
I think I've never talked to anyone so openly in my life. I just opened myself as a book, like without any holding ups. Like I would like, and it was very relieving and scary because it's just that fear of like being able to answer properly and not to mix up dates because sometimes it happens and you're like, oh please, I don't want to like mess this up.
And did you, what was your support system like in family or friends during that process?
Well, I'm a member for LGBT, where we have a lot of people from Russia and ex-Soviet countries. I guess it was one of my support system. Also, my cousin was very close with me during that time, still now, and my friends who knew and supported what I'm going through. So I kind of created a family in New York, and it was very, very helpful for me to go through this. But also, I found out about yoga. I started doing yoga and doing meditation. So.
And during this time, your family knew that you were applying for asylum?
I told my mom only. I didn't want to tell anyone else. But I guess, I don't know if my mom understood me. I guess now they understand more. So I didn't want to hurt them.
Why? What were you concerned about hurting them? In what way?
I think I have to understand that my mom lives in a very homophobic country and also in a society where everyone has to judge everyone and everyone has an opinion about everyone's life. And I was kind of afraid of to jeopardize their lifestyle, their life, because I'm gay and applied for asylum. But then someone has to do this, like come out openly and say, yes, I am a gay man from Uzbekistan, and I want to be a role model for young LGBT people from Uzbekistan, because when I was young, I didn't have a role model and I didn't know what gay means. So I decided to be that person.
What are some of the gay spaces you frequented here when you got here, or that you still frequent? Any place that really either made you feel at home or accepted, or just a place that you like to have fun at?
Well, I guess a therapy and industry to start with. This was the first bars that I went to when I came to New York, then all other bars. And gay center, I found the gay center through which I found Rusa LGBT because they had a brochure at the entrance, and I was very happy to find a Russian-speaking LGBT community. And it was just a mesmerizing moment for me when I came to a meeting and everyone spoke Russian, the language that I know, and everyone just like me. It felt very different and homey for me. There's a few places that I felt like home.
So, as you were creating your life here in the U.S., what were you afraid of? If anything, what were your concerns?
What were my concerns? I guess my concerns for creating a family while like waiting for my interview, being in a limbo, like that moment was a bit scary for me. But once I went through it, I guess I stopped concentrating on my fears or what I'm afraid of, but not thinking about it. I know this is just yoga stuff, but you know, as a human being, I guess if I try to concentrate on my fears and what's holding me in the future, what's there for me in the future, I guess it's gonna make me more stressed. So I'm trying to avoid that.
It's a good thing. So since you received asylum, what has your life been like since getting that news?
I was, first of all, when I went to get the answer, I cried so much because, you know, I didn't know what the answer is going to be. And so much thoughts were in my head, and I was fighting that monkey in my head all the time while on my way. And when I went to the USCIS office on Long Island, and I had to wait around like 20 minutes for me to go and get the answer. And when I got the answer that the application is sent for approval, I just started like crying. And the officer had to stop and give me some moment. I think I cried a lot. And then he's like, you know what, don't cry anymore, you're fine now. It was just, you know, very emotional.
And from that day forward?
From that day forward, I guess everything changed to a better place, because once after my interview I met my boyfriend. Actually, next day of my interview, it was March 10th, I went to a dinner and this cute guy was sitting next to me and we started a conversation, and we're together now. We moved in together and we just moved to Brooklyn, Prospect Heights. You know, and now I understand that I have to start from the scratch, so I'm planning to go back to school, to start a career, to do all what couples do. Travel.
What do you want to study?
I had thought about going to accounting school, but now I want to be a lawyer. I know it's too much work, and going through the process and also helping some other people from my community to go through the process. I think I'm just prepared for this. I want to fight for immigration rights.
So now you're a Brooklyn resident.
Yes.
What's your life like in Brooklyn?
Well, we just moved in May. So far it's been fun. I love the neighborhood. I love people. So the day we moved in, I guess the next day we moved in, most of the neighbors showed up saying just to say hi, which was I'm like, oh, okay, it's like summer camp. People are coming to say hi, which is in Manhattan, you wouldn't do that. It was nice.
What neighborhood?
Prospect Heights.
Oh.
And now, you mentioned Versa LGBT,
Yes.
and are you still involved with that group?
I do activism for USA. We organize marches, we organized the Brighton Beach Pride, which was the second year this year. We also work with asylum seekers, just help them to give them as much information as we can as a community and welcome new members. Yeah.
In regards to helping asylum seekers, this interview will be posted online and it'll be available for anyone to see. Is there any advice that you would offer someone who is thinking about applying for asylum, or it's just a faint idea in their head at this point, as someone who's gone through the process?
I think the best advice would be always seek a legal advice and get a lawyer. This is my best advice to anyone who wants to apply for asylum. Even though a lot of people would do them on their own, which is fine, but I would still highly recommend to get a lawyer and to work with a lawyer to go through the process smoothly. This is my advice.
Are there any, now that you're an official New Yorker, is there anything about your culture that you miss?
Yeah, I miss music. I mean, live music. Music. I don't miss food because you can find a lot of Uzbek restaurants in Brooklyn and Queens. I think there's one in Manhattan as well. I just miss being in big spaces with people from my culture, which is possible in New York, but I feel like I'm not welcome there because of my activism and because of me being gay. But to be honest, I've never tried it, so.
Excuse me. So it's interesting as a asylum seeker and as an activist. What are some of your thoughts about the current political, social moment we find ourselves in this country? Especially from a point of view of immigration rights and some of the rhetoric that's being used, in politics today is very heated and misinformed. As someone who's been through such a difficult process, what are your thoughts about that?
I think my thoughts are like, the first thing is it's scary because I remember the election night, November 8th, 2016, when first time in my life I had panic attack. Before that, I've never had panic attacks. Because I kind of was expecting this political turmoil in this country. Once we elected the president, it has gotten even worse. Because I ran away from people like this president in Uzbekistan, in Russia, let's say, and it was. It's scary for a lot of people who see America as a heaven of freedom, where everyone is equal regardless of race, nationality, or where you come from. And America is an America is an immigrant country. It's a country based on immigrants. And to vilify us, I don't think it's helpful to anyone. That's just my thoughts.
Can you talk a little bit about what your activist work looks like?
Well, first of all, my activism is with RUSA in terms of like organizing rallies, organizing well, I was one of the organizers of Brighton Beach Pride. It was Lyosha Gashkov, who is the co-president of Rus LGBT. It was his idea to do Brighton Beach Pride, which is great, I guess. This was one of our like main organizational moment, and also we have been to rallies. Also, my activism is to work with asylum seekers directly. Most of the time I help with translations, interpret for people who come to the United States and they don't speak English. I went to one interview as a pro bono interpreter recently. So this is the thing that I do.
Why is it important for you to work and fight for immigrant rights specifically?
Because I've been through this process myself, and I know how it feels. And as a person who speaks good English, I'd say it's, I guess, easier for me to guide those people who don't know English, who might not understand some specific things here. So just helping people, you know.
With regards to Brighton Beach Pride, is a very historic event, right? So can you talk a little bit about what it took, the work it took, and the planning, and the work on your part of organizing to put together an event like that?
Well, the idea, I guess, was at Lyosha's, and it was lingering in his head for a while. And we marched last year in May first time, but we started organizing the Pride, I guess, since January 2017. It was a lot of work because this was like a big rally, an organizational moment for USA. We just divided up the work of who's gonna do the flyers, who's gonna distribute them, who's gonna work on social media, and I guess I mostly worked with distribution of flyers first time and second time as well, and just who's going to be marshal for the Pride. But most of the work, I have to admit, it was done by Lyosha, like getting permits from Parks Department, working with NYPD, like all the crucial work was done by him. We just did some small work, which was, I guess, very helpful for him and for us.
And Brighton Beach is largely populated, right? Russian population.
Yes, it's mostly Russian speaking, and I'm from ex-Soviet countries.
And did your group face any kind of backlash from organizing an event like that?
I guess first time people, and this time people didn't understand, and they were like dancing with us and, you know, waving their hands. But when they were asked a question, like, do you know what's happening? They're like, no, what's happening? And when they were told, some of them said bad words, bad things. Others were like, okay, let these people leave. Let them lead the way they want, the lives they want. So, you know, we kind of want to change that. We want to, like, be visible so we can change the dynamics in our community towards us.
So you talked about your activism, you talked about yoga,
Yes.
and kind of that being your free time and your spiritual life. Is there any other things you do in your free time? And if not, can you expand on your yoga practices and how often you get to do that in your free time?
Besides doing yoga, I also play some piano, but just very, very basics. I'm trying to get back to piano, and I had to start from the beginning, from the scratch, because I forgot everything, which also helps me to distress. As to yoga, well, I started yoga in 2016 in April. I went to Bikram yoga, which is you practice yoga in a hot room. it was very hard in the beginning, but I stayed. I decided to stay and do this, and then it has been kind of my retreat in New York, like be myself and do that yoga.
Do you have any other hobbies?
I love reading books. I love reliving the lives of the characters in books. It just takes off my mind from what's happening now.
Reading anything now?
I just finished a book by Yuval Harari, Homo Sapiens. So I read the second book, which is called Homo Deus. It's a history of humankind and how horrible we are as human beings.
What's some practical advice you would give, given your experience as an activist, what we could be doing now or should be doing now?
I guess to speak more about people who seek asylum, especially LGBTQI people, and to show Americans how we go through this process and how can we engage Americans in helping those immigrants, LGBTQI immigrants.
What do you think the average American does not understand about the immigration process?
Well, first of all, they never go through this, and as a person who went through this, and when you apply for asylum, usually you get invited within 180 days. If it takes longer, in 6 months, you are eligible to apply for work authorization and Social Security, which gives you a right to work officially. But not a lot of people can afford that. Not a lot of people can just sit at home and wait until they get the work authorization. And then finding jobs or learning English. A lot of immigrants who come here from exotic countries, they don't speak English. They had to learn English to even some basic words, So I guess just knowing how what our struggles are and how we can cooperate, like to getting compromise on those struggles, like to help each other.
This might be not a difficult question for you to answer, or you might not have any insight on it, but how do you feel about cultures that have been here for a long time but did go through the immigration process at some point and do not understand immigration today, or are maybe xenophobic today, even though they have family members who have gone through this process? Do you have any insight to that? What do you think about that anyway?
Well, I can only speak about people who come from my background. We lived, most of the immigrants who moved here in 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, they lived in USSR, where we always had a strong leader, like, I said this and you have to follow this. And I guess when people moved here, they went through the process, they got the paperwork, they became American citizens. But I guess after a while, they just easily have forgotten what was it like before. And now it's just, they're trying to be part of this, a movement against those immigrants who are coming, which is very interesting because I don't actually know the answer, and I wish someone would explain to me why this happens. A lot of people come here go through the process, and after a while they become so anti-immigrant, which is very interesting topic for me as well.
You brought up earlier about your own experiences, somewhat being discriminated against because of the color of your skin.
Yes.
And how often that gets left out of the narrative in this country, or especially like in terms of like the LGBTQ community, and around how discrimination works across all borders necessarily. And I think in particular the political moment we find ourselves in, a lot of the rhetoric is being directed at people of color, Mexicans in particular, and people from Latin America at this moment. In your own activism work, has race and ethnicity and skin color played a role in the work you're doing?
Not necessarily in Rusa LGBT, I guess, because a lot of people who come to seek refuge, they see how diverse America is, and kind of try to learn how to navigate here in terms of race. I mean, at Rusa, I have to be honest, I haven't experienced anything towards myself based on my skin color or based on my country of origin.
So given all your experiences, where do you see the future going? What is your hope for the work that you're doing moving forward?
Well, I hopefully I'm going to be doing a huge interview with BBC Uzbek services during Pride. So the idea is to show to the world that Uzbekistan is one of those countries where sodomy law still exists and homosexuality is illegal. So you cannot be a gay person in Uzbekistan, or you would end up in prison for up to 3 years. And a lot of people speak about all other countries where homosexuality is illegal, but Uzbekistan is always not mentioned on these terms. I would notice some articles, but not a lot. Let's say a lot of politics is towards Russia, but I have to say that in Russia they have organizations that work with LGBT people. They have gay clubs, and I'm not saying the rhetoric is not good in Russia or the discrimination is not growing towards LGBT communities. No, I'm just saying that there are still organizations who are fighting for LGBT peoples, people. Whereas in Uzbekistan, we don't have that organization. But also I have to admit there is no one from Uzbekistan who would say, "Oh, I'm an openly gay man." I guess. So I see myself fighting for the rights of LGBT people in Uzbekistan and all over Central Asia. And hopefully with the work we'll try to engage the international community to what's happening in Uzbekistan towards LGBTQI people. Just to start the dialogue. I'm not saying I can change the law because I guess it's going to take a while. People are not ready for that. But just at least to start a dialogue and to tell people that we exist. That's the main thing right now.
And if people out there wanted to help you in that and support you in that, what are some things that people can do to help move that work forward?
I guess they can help by contacting Rusa LGBT, and if they want to donate money, time, or just come to our meetings, which happens every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30, and to know more about our activism and how they can help.
And is there a website that people can?
Yes, rusalgbt.com.
If, we're nearing the end of our time in this interview, but is there anything else that you want people to know about LGBTQ immigrants in particular?
I guess a lot of LGBTQI people share one thing of being different, and we all have our stories of how we grew up and how we face discrimination, not only in Uzbekistan or in the United States or China. What I want the people to know, LGBTQI people, to know that I guess we make the immigrants make this country great, and especially LGBTQI immigrants. We bring in a mix of interesting, sometimes horrifying stories, which adapt to our culture to LGBTQ culture, and to let the people in the United States see how diverse we are, from what backgrounds we come from, and what our challenges are, yes.
Is there anything you want people out there to know about you and your story?
I just want people to know that I'm human first, and then everything else rest. That's it.
Well, Anvar, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thanks.